Welcome to another episode of my Wheel of Time reread on Reading the Pattern. We'll be talking about The Eye of the World, chapters 21 through 25, in which we chat up some wolves and chill with some hippies. Let's take turns riding Bella and get right to it.
This video may include spoilers for all Wheel of Time books. If you have not finished reading the series and do not want to be massively spoiled, stop here or proceed at your own risk. For the first time now, we have 3 different groups to track. Perrin meets back up with Egwene, both now on the east side of the Arenelle, and they decide to head off across country toward Caemlyn rather than continuing on first to Whitebridge. Rand, Mat, and Tom continue on the spray down the Arenelle and arrive in Whitebridge. Nynaeve finds Moiraine and Lan still on the west side of the Arenelle, and they agree to head straight for Whitebridge in hopes of first finding the 2 boys who are traveling by boat. Let's review the notebook of our favorite Ogier to remind ourselves what happened in these chapters.
Nynaeve wakes up alone on the riverbank. She heads downriver and realizes Lan and Moiraine are near, and listens to them out of sight. She hears that Lan is worried about how so many Trollocs were sent to them, apparently only after they crossed the Tarn. Moiraine knows that one boy is across the river, and the other 2 are heading downriver without their coins, which she had used to track them. At this point, Moiraine reveals that she knows Nynaeve is hiding nearby, but Lan had not known. This is because Moiraine can sense that Nynaeve too can channel the One Power, and she lays out enough proofs that Nynaeve is reluctantly forced to admit it. Although Nynaeve still wants nothing to do with Aes Sedai, she is determined to find the Emmonsfielders, and so she decides to continue on with Moiraine after the 2 boys who are headed to Whitebridge. Perrin wakes on the far side of the river and heads downriver looking for Egwene. He finds her with a small fire and her horse Bella. Neither of them has seen any of the others and are worried that they are dead. Perrin convinces Egwene of his plan to head straight across country to Caemlyn instead of following the river to Whitebridge. Perrin takes the lead and disagrees with Egwene over who should ride Bella, but she insists they take turns. Egwene was able to make her first fire by channeling, but struggles to do so again, so they are very hungry when they smell a cook fire, and Perrin cautiously checks it out. They meet a man named Elias with yellow eyes dressed in animal skins, and he invites them to join him. He about laughs himself to death when he finds out they are trying to get to Caemlyn the way they are going.
Wolves approach, because Elias is able to communicate with them. Egwene wants to know if this ability can be taught, but though it cannot be, Perrin, it turns out, is also able to talk to wolves.
They tell Elias a false story they've come up with about who they are and where they came from, but the wolves can tell it's a lie. Finally, Perrin tells the truth. Elias avoids Aes Sedai after Red Sisters tried to gentle him when they found out he could talk to wolves, even though it has nothing to do with the power. He tries to convince Perrin and Egwene to stay with him and the wolves instead of continuing on to Tar Valon, but they won't consider it. Elias and most of the wolves decide to accompany them anyway, due to their interest in Perrin, who is starting to realize he can feel the wolves in his mind. Aboard the Spray, Rand continues to have dreams of Baal-Zaman. Baal Doman continues to set a reckless pace, trying to stay ahead of the Trollocs.
The crew seems happy enough with their passengers, with the exception of Gelb, who was blamed for falling asleep the night the Trollocs attacked. Tom is wary, but it is Mat who is suspicious of everyone. Tom begins training Rand and Mat in earnest, since they are posing as his apprentices. 4 days into the journey, Rand decides to climb the mast and try balancing while it sways, not realizing what he is doing until Tom calls him down and plays it off as part of the training. Rand realizes Mat still has the dagger from Shadar Logoth and is also still dreaming of Baal-Zaman.
Perrin no longer dreams of Baal-Zaman since he joined the wolves, though there is always a wolf in his dreams now.
As they travel, they come upon a group of Tuatha'an, the traveling people, a peaceful folk with colorful wagons and clothing who search for a lost song. The seeker, named Rain, leads the band and welcomes Elias, who is known to him. His wife Ela takes Egwene to her heart, and their grandson Aram flirts with her.
Perrin learns about their Way of the Leaf, which is a refusal to commit any violence, even in self-defense, and he cannot reconcile with this in a world where Shadowspawn exist. Rain tells Elias about a story circulating from the Aiel that the Dark One wants to, quote, blind the eye of the world, and no one knows what this means, although Baal-Zaman has mentioned the Eye of the World more than once in Perrin's dreams. Perrin gets on Egwene's case about her dancing with Aram, and Egwene breaks down in tears over her fears for Rand and the others.
Let's take a look at all the fascinating details and hints of what is to come in Robert Jordan's master plan.
When Moiraine is describing the effects of channeling sickness that Nynaeve would have felt when she first channeled without knowing it, she is also describing what is already happening and what will continue to happen for Rand over the course of this book. The first time channeling produces sickness a week to 10 days later, which is exactly what happened to Rand in Baerlon, and then occurs closer and closer to the time of channeling until the two happen almost together. For Rand, the second time channeling occurred when he jumped aboard the Spray, and then the sickness occurred 4 days later with him up on the mast like a crazy guy. We will be able to continue to track this for Rand going forward.
When Perrin and Egwene give Elias the fake backstory they came up with, they pretend to be from Saldea, which is another tiny bit of foreshadowing for Perrin's eventual link with Saldea when he marries Fail.
When Elias gives a few details of his own backstory, he mentions how much he hates that he had to kill warders when he was resisting the Red Ajah. And this makes sense, because we eventually find out that Elias is a warder and still bonded to his Aes Sedai despite a long separation. This might actually explain some of his special abilities, such as his endurance, even better than him being a wolf brother. Bael Doman mentions a slew of things that will come back around later on, including a stone hand 50 feet high, clutching a giant sphere on Tremalking. This is the female Sa'angreal that Nynaeve will use to help Rand cleanse Saidin. When Rand first gets cut on a thorn in one of his Baalzamon dreams, and then wakes to find it is real, we can't understand how this is possible. But it is a hint that these are not ordinary dreams. We later find out that what happens to people in the world of dreams also happens in the waking world. In actuality, it's even more likely that Ishamael has pulled the boys into a dream shard where he will have even more control over what happens to them. Also, in this same dream, it ends with Rand seeing an image of himself and Baalzamon beginning to merge until they have one face. And this is essentially what does happen after Ishamael is reborn as Moradin, and he and Rand begin feeling some of what the other feels until they eventually swap bodies. We start to see hints that Mat's personality is being affected by carrying the Shadar Logoth dagger, in the way he stops laughing and starts suspecting literally everyone of being against them.
Mat also gets his first glimpse of the Tower of Genjai, which will be hugely important when he must rescue Moiraine along with Tom all the way in Book 13. Let's discuss the central themes and focal points that these chapters are woven around.
I think the defining feeling for the three viewpoint characters in these chapters is fear of their own potential. Nynaeve realizes that she can channel, which is something she has been taught to be prejudiced against her whole life. She even goes so far, as many do, in suggesting that it is something of the Dark One. Rand is only beginning to realize that there is something strange going on with him, beyond just that the Dark One is after him. After his reckless behavior on the mast, he begins to question himself and really fear what is going on inside himself. Perrin has his first encounter with wolves and does not want to face the fact that he can talk with them.
Elias and the wolves, Aram and the traveling people, both play defining roles in Perrin's development, and in some ways each represent the push and pull in his nature, a tendency towards freedom and violence on the one hand, and a longing for peace and order on the other. Ultimately, although Perrin fears what his link to the wolves means for him, and his first instinct is to reject the connection, it will end up being an essential piece of Perrin's self-actualization. Let's break down the characters and their defining moments in these chapters.
For the first time, we see Egwene through someone's eyes other than Rand. Although, as Rand's closest friend, Perrin is certainly not a neutral party, and he also sees Egwene as the girl everyone expects will marry Rand. We still see Egwene's determination to forge ahead and make something of herself out in the world through the eyes of someone who never expected her to do this. So when she connects so readily with the traveling people and enjoys Aram's attention, Perrin is not comfortable with it. This is one of the first examples of how well Egwene fits with different cultures that she interacts with, learning as much as she can from them even when she never considers becoming a part of them. A fierce desire and ability to learn is probably Egwene's strongest point, and we can even see that in her interest in learning to talk to wolves. We would expect most people would be terrified of this, but Egwene, most of all, is intrigued.
Let's talk about what we need to know about the Dark One and all of his minions and followers.
Ishamael at this point is becoming a little better known to us, and he continues to influence the boys through their dreams. He still presents himself as Baal-Zaman, and perhaps he really does think he is the Dark One. He could easily be insane enough. When we later learn about the true power and the effects of it and how recklessly Ishamael uses it, it's no stretch to assume he might be as insane as he could get while still functioning enough to run this plot to track down the three Taviran. I also have to wonder why he keeps mentioning the Eye of the World to the boys when presumably he would not want them going after it, unless maybe he's not as in control as he appears to be.
And now, let's find a little levity amidst the darkness.
I love these little hints of Nynaeve and Lan sizing up each other's abilities, their unspoken competition in the tracking ability, which sort of adds to their mutual attraction. Nynaeve being satisfied when Lan doesn't know where she is, but then trying to push on his arm and being unable to move it and trying to ignore him blocking her. Nynaeve often thinks that he is silently mocking her and bristles in typical Nynaeve fashion. But knowing Lan a bit better than Nynaeve does yet, I can guess he probably has warmer thoughts and feelings for her already. And it's still kind of amusing to see this silent push and pull that they have at this point. Thanks for continuing on with me in this reread of The Wheel of Time. Be sure to stay tuned for my next video in the series, which will cover The Eye of the World, chapters 26 through 30. And don't forget to let me know in the comments any favorite details from these chapters that I've missed so I can give you a shout out in a future video. And whether or not you can talk to wolves, please be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any Wheel of Time content, including speculation for the upcoming Wheel of Time TV series. See you next time in Whitebridge.